Hi there, gonna give a quick review of the Hyundai HPS1100 Power Station. Now I've bought this for Otto, the Campervan, as an off-grid power solution. And the motivations behind this was last year the pandemic kind of forced us to get as self-contained as possible. And we got to some really interesting places actually, but the facilities were non-existent. So I kind of wanted something which would allow us to maybe do some cooking, with electric off-grid, because I've always been a bit squeamish about cooking with gas in a fan because of the fire risk, any carbon monoxide risk, etc, etc. And sometimes you do have no choice. If it's really raining or if you're on a French air, you need that option there. So let's get it out of the box and see what it's like. So here it is outside of the box. It's very weighty. It's an absolutely totally solid bit of kit. And just to give you some kind of ideas of the kind of things that it's got on it. Fundamentally, it's a 100 amp hour battery in there. But it's also got a 1000 watt inverter, which just allows us to two AC power supplies. You've got a cigarette lighter socket just here, but also an array of USB type sockets. There's even a jump starter here for the car. You can charge this, if I spin it around, you look at the back, you can basically charge it overnight through the mains here, but it's also got a DC input there. You can, in theory, you can charge it by solar, and I suspect you can also charge it using your cigarette lighter socket while driving, but I've not actually tried that yet. Okay, so let's give this thing a test. I mean, primarily, of course, one of the main things you do when camping is boil water to do any cooking or make a brew. So that's got to be the first test we do. I've got my travel kettle here. This is a 1000 watt G-Pass kettle. I'll put the link in the comments down below. So 1000 watts, 1000 watt inverter, everything should be fine. Let's plug him in. I've filled him up to half a litre. We turn him on. 100% battery. Turn on the AC power. Turn on the kettle. And let's see how much power this is going to use. Now I'm not going to make you watch a kettle boil, so I'll stop the video and come back to this in a moment. So we're a couple of minutes in now. You can hear the fan on the power station. You can also hear the kettle starting to boil. But just zooming on the display here, you can see 2 minutes in, it's drawing about 940 watts of power, so well within that 1000 watt limit of the inverter. It does have a peak of 2000 watts if required, but we're nowhere near this for this device. Okay, we've boiled and it's done that in just over 4 minutes. And it's used about 5 to 6% of the battery, so that's pretty decent. So 100 amp hours, okay, it's used 5-6% of it. In theory, if you can do this right down to the full length of the battery, it means you can boil that kettle, half a litre of water in that kettle, about 16 times. And I think that's a pretty decent start. So unlike your actual leisure battery in the Campervan, you can actually take this right down to 0% without damaging the battery. It's a different kind of technology altogether. Hence why you can run it right down to 0%. Anyway, on to the next test. Can we use this for cooking? Now, I've already mentioned really not a fan of using gas in the Campervan if I can help it. So the latest thing I've got is this. It's a little mini induction hob made by Vango. It's the Vango Sizzle. Comes in at about £40. It's rated at 800 watts, so this thing is going to have no problem whatsoever with it. Let's just put it in and see how it gets on, shall we? So we'll plug it in. Put a pan of water on there. Turn it on, and we're up and running quite nicely. You can hear the power station kicking in again. And yes, quite clearly they're drawing between 700 and 800 watts. This is a really, really neat solution. It's so small, this Vango Sizzle induction cooker, and very efficient, of course, as well for cooking with electric. Okay, so I think we've had that running sufficiently. It's Just about starting to bring our spaghetti bolognese, or a very watery looking spaghetti bolognese, to the boil there. And there's a really easy calculation here. Basically, it can run for a minute for every percent of the battery. So in theory, you could use this little induction hob here for 100 minutes using this. That's a lot of stir fries. If I just move that off the hob, it'll stop. And of course the drawer will go right down to 0 on here. Absolutely great little stove that. I think it's a fantastic compact little addition for any camper. I'm really impressed with that. Finally, we've got one more test, and it's this. A low wattage hairdryer. Now obviously I don't need this. My hair's often grade 3, grade 4 all over. But there's people in the family who do. This I think is top rated at about 1000 watts. Indeed it is. So the family can dry their hair off grid when camping, and apparently the straighteners are even low wattage, so they can use the hair straighteners if necessary too. So quite a result. So all in all, it's an expensive bit of kit, about £1,000, but it will do the job. And we can easily get a night off grid with electricity using this, if not a whole weekend. And it's more than just a toy for the campervan, of course. You know, if we have a power outage in the house in winter, then we've got this as a backup power supply there when required. I've tried on a few devices today. There's probably much more you could do with it. It's probably not got enough power to heat your campervan. I don't think a fan heater is going to last for long with this, but you could perhaps use an electric blanket with it overnight. And that in itself is actually quite an interesting thought. Anyway, that's it. That finishes the review. I'll put links to the various things I've mentioned in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe for the next video full of stuff and nonsense about Otto.